Hi, everybody. We are live on the air. Let's see how this goes. This went it went pretty well last month, where there ended up being just three of us for the whole hour. Now there are already like twice as many people in the room for this hour, so this is going to be a lot of fun. Joining me this time, first of all, our returning champion Henrik is here with me again. Henrik, how you doing, buddy?
Yeah, that's fine, thanks.
Awesome. Thanks for coming back to endure this once again. Then, in no particular order, Peter is here with me. Hi, Peter. How's it going?
Hi there. How you guys doing?
Awesome. Excellent. Let's see. Warren is here, testing out new equipment, apparently. And Harry is here, staying up with us on a school night.
G'day, mate, from Australia.
And Dan is here, too. Dan, can you hear me?
I can. Yep.
Dan is here. Dan is with us as well. So, hi everybody.
Hello.
Thanks for joining me. I have absolutely no plan for this show at all. I have nothing that I really absolutely want to talk about. I just want to hang out. So, is there anything on anybody's mind? I floated the idea of talking about Halloween before we went up on the air, but nobody else gives a shit about Halloween. So.
I just came back from a party last night, and actually when I woke up, I'm in Springfield, Illinois, so it's Central Time, so it's not like, it's kind of late morning here, but yeah. I woke up and I still had my eyeliner on, and I was like, oh, you know what, if I'm going to go on, I might not want to scare all the muggles with still wearing my eyeliner.
What were you dressed up as?
A guy wearing eyeliner.
That's a clever costume.
Yeah, I was just whoring myself out. Some girls were like, if you put on eyeliner, well, like, all right.
I can understand that. I never actually, I don't think I would have ever actually done something like that, even if somebody told me that. But that's probably why I wasn't very popular. I never had the balls to actually do it.
One thing that I would like to do at some point that I currently don't think I have the body for, but I think at some point I would like to dress up as Rocky from the Rocky Horror Picture Show. I think that would be something really ridiculous and really fun to do sometime. Not Rocky, Frankenfurter.
Oh yeah, Tim Curry's guy. Yeah.
Oh yeah, because that would just be a lot of fun to do sometime.
Dressing up like Rocky himself would take a lot of gym work.
Yeah, that would take. Yeah, I don't think I'll ever have the body for
that. That's something that I've never gotten into, the whole Rocky Horror thing.
No.
Maybe it's I've never been to one of the live shows where like everybody interacts with the movie. Like I've never gone to a screening, so maybe that's part of the reason. But like I watch the movie and I'm just like, oh, okay, whatever.
Well, the movie's not good.
Yeah, I know. It's not. I mean, it's about the experience. But people do that with The Room too. People like they have screening parties with The Room, where like they throw spoons at the screen whenever spoons are on. And they recite the lines. I don't know.
Do you follow the Bible Reloaded?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I just saw their video a couple days ago. I think it was about where they were talking about The Room. It's pretty funny. I've never seen it. I need to.
Yeah, it's like I guess everybody says it's the Citizen Kane of bad movies. It's pretty great for how terrible it is. It's like the thing about The Room that I love is that it's like that close to being a real movie. But it's just off. It's just a little off.
Yeah, I like the way they describe it. It's like the uncanny valley of real movies.
Yeah, that's how I would describe it. It's like it's almost a real movie, isn't it? And it's got like the musical score sounds like it's like the music from The Legend of Zelda, which is just weird. It's like this sing-songy sort of do 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 do. That's the music.
Greets and salutes, Steve. How it goes?
Hey, Lauren is with us.
Yeah, you may know me better.
Glad you can make it.
Oh, that's
Troubleshooter 125.
Oh, you're Troubleshooter 125.
The one and only, in
That's
theory.
awesome. Glad to meet you face to face finally.
Yeah.
That's great. I feel all special now. You finally put a face to the comments. So what's up?
Not a whole lot at the moment. I've got leaves to mulch and what's left of grass to mow in a bit.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That sounds like a fun day.
Oh, thrilling, yeah.
I'm fortunate that I don't. I live in an apartment and everything like that is taken care of. So I don't really have a yard, but at the same time I don't have a yard to take care of either.
In my case, it's something to do at least.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that I've always thought about when am I going to rent or buy a house, or am I going to have an apartment? And I think I'm lazy enough to never, ever want a yard.
If I'm ever rich enough that I can afford to pay someone to take care of it for me.
Okay, yeah, I guess there's that threshold.
I would love to have a yard.
Anytime between now and 1 o'clock.
What's that?
Yep.
Oh.
Wait,
I think it's talking on the phone outside.
Can I talk to you later?
Yeah, I think we've got Tim on.
Alright, hopefully I'll see you on in a bit.
He's on a call or something.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well, we have to
He's
be able to
conducting-
institute slavery again, so that we can. And it's not the bad slavery; it'll be the good slavery of robotics.
Good slavery.
The good slavery of robotics.
We'll institute the good. Yeah, well, until the robots turn against us.
Yeah, we can never ever give them brains; they just have to be robots.
You know, I have to tell you, that's a great point. After all the dystopian fiction and all the movies that people have made about the robots turning against us and killing us, if we invent robots and we give them the capacity to do that, it's kind of our fault.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that I think is interesting that most people don't consider when they think about artificial intelligence is that if we ever do create some kind of artificial intelligence, it will be entirely unlike anything we've seen before, because there's no reason to expect that it will be like us in as far as how we think or perceive. You know, it'll kind of have its own reality almost. You know, it's not anything we've ever encountered before. It's almost impossible to predict what a sentient computer would be like.
There's a further problem on that as well, in that one point that Lawrence Krauss made when I saw him at the Unbelievers is that he said that a brain that would be able to approximate an artificial intelligence that would approximate human intelligence will require some 10 terawatts of power to drive. Now, that may be an overestimate, but I tend to listen to Lawrence, you know what I'm saying?
That's interesting. I wonder how he came up with that number.
Yeah. Well, did anybody else see the movie Her?
Yeah, that was
No.
great.
Yeah, that was a really interesting exploration of I thought the way they handled that in terms of how an artificial intelligence would evolve to become different from a human intelligence was really interesting.
Mhm.
How, you know, eventually she got to the point where even though he was still talking to her as though she were a human being, it sort of became apparent that she was far, far beyond his own level.
Well, here's a question for you. If an artificial intelligence becomes that intelligent, would the level of loneliness they'd experience be that much more acute?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Well, if
Well,
an
it's
artificial intelligence
hard-
became that intelligent, then they would be able to create children fairly easily, and the
Well,
children wouldn't
it's-
have to grow up.
If they have the means to do it. I mean, that would require either expropriating somebody else's computer, which is not beyond the realm of possibility, or having manufacturing means to do the same thing. And right now, either the first is a lot closer reach than the second is.
Well, if you think about it, emotions, as the way we experience them, is nothing more than chemical reactions, how our brains interprets the different chemical signals that we get that are released in response to the people we interact with or situations or find ourselves in. So it's really kind of almost impossible to even say if a computer could experience something like that, because it's just totally different. We've evolved emotions the way we have, as a product of evolution and or the way we interact socially. So it's kind of hard to even say if a computer could even experience something like that, or what emotions would mean for a system like that.
It would sort of be prefaced on the idea of a computer society, would it not? Because you have to have interactions for emotions to have an environment to develop in. Or am I full of beans?
But who is saying that artificial intelligence has to have emotions?
Yeah, that's true. It doesn't have to necessarily even have to have emotions.
Well, wouldn't it necessarily be that we would have to model it upon ourselves, because we really don't have anything else to model it on as far as intelligence? And
yeah, that also gets into some really interesting concepts of could you program could you even program constraints, or how much would it if it's, I feel like if you have something that's like a sentient code basically, could it just rewrite parts of its identity almost? It could almost just define itself.
Yeah, is there any scenario in which we could create it that it wouldn't end up wiping us out?
I think so. I honestly do think so, because
the only way around that is Isaac Asimov's 3 laws of robotics, which is going to be probably, once it has any kind of advantage, shoehorning that in is going to be a trick.
Yeah, but then again, he made a couple of novels actually debunking his own laws, didn't he?
Well, that was what iRobot was all about, was all the conflicts and contradictions inherent in the 3 laws. I mean, he wrote a bunch of short stories in iRobot that outlined that very business, and some of them were just hilarious as hell. In fact, you mentioned that. I want to go back and reread iRobot purely for that reason.
Dan, you were going to say something, I think?
I was going to say something that, part of the programming, because it's not going to be an easy program to write, it will there'll be multiple ways of instituting these ideas, like providing them with an outlook on life that is positive, empathetic, things like that. I don't think that we would be able to, I don't think that they're going to reach any more of a level of autonomy than we ourselves have, honestly, and we don't have nearly as much as we think we do.
Yeah. Jay in the chat says we make them out of Nerf, then they can't hurt us.
There you go.
Channeling Rick Overton there, I think. That's a good idea.
What you really want to do is make sure you have one of those 2010 Odyssey 2 power cutoffs right at the socket, man, and it's not overly complex. It's not even wireless. It is, whappo chappo. It cuts you off, and that is
yes. Well, I think Ricky Gervais was talking about something like that in one of the. He and Stephen Merchant did a couple of Office shorts for Microsoft that got released on the internet a couple years ago, and he was doing David Brent talking about talking to a representative of Microsoft, and he's saying now if you ever make the intelligent robots, make sure that you have like a kill switch, so that if they start going mental and trying to kill us, you can just go phew and just cut it off right away.
Yeah.
Just gotta not connect them to the internet.
Yeah. And that kill switch has got to be utter simplicity. It can't be dependent on the kind of electronics that the robot can override.
Yeah, it can't be an iPhone app.
It's got to be a word like
switch.
Pickle farts or something.
Yeah.
Like Battlestar Galactica.
Very simple, single pull, single throw switch. You hit it, it's done. Period.
Exactly.
End discussion.
Yeah.
Then
a real
Battlestar
question.
Galactica.
Like
Battlestar
what was that?
Galactica.
The real question would be, if we can put that sort of kill switch in an artificial intelligence, wouldn't it be possible then to put that inside of us in some way, and then we could be just as vulnerable to it, maybe not inherently born with it, but it could definitely be added to us, maybe even without our knowing it.
It's called an arterial shunt.
That's how I was going to say.
You cut off
called a bullet.
You're done.
Yeah.
It's called a bullet.
A bullet.
That too.
Yeah.
Pull a quick slit, pull a quick switch, and lights out.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I tend to try. I'm pretty optimistic as far as the evolution of mankind, and I mean, I see the track of human history as sort of moving very fitfully in the right direction. I mean, we halt and we fuck up and we make terrible mistakes, but eventually we sort it out and we take a few steps in the right direction before we fuck up again. But I don't know. The whole artificial intelligence thing makes me wonder. Like, is that going to be? Is that? It's like somebody said. I forget who said it, but somebody said like, if we ever invent the holodeck, like on Star Trek, that will be humanity's last invention, because that will just ruin us. And I wonder if artificial intelligence might actually be that thing. Like, we'll have that wonderful moment where we're like, oh, artificial intelligence, look, it actually works, and then cut to 5 years later, and there's just no people anywhere.
Look at the Terminator. Look at Dwight Schultz's character on Star Trek TNG.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a vector quantity. It's any one of 1,000 different directions it can go in.
That's true.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not that optimistic on the ability to create true artificial intelligence by conventional programming, like the way we typically think of writing computer programs, because I'm not sure if the way we do that is that conducive to something like free thought. I mean, we can program extremely lifelike programs, but I'm not sure if we could reach that point. I feel like we would almost have to apply, something that is the natural universe with, because our intelligence basically arises from, the complex interactions of basic laws over a long period of time. So I almost think we'd almost just have to set up an environment that incorporates some kind of randomness and just let it go and see what happens.
Yeah, it would have to be like a human brain simulator.
Right now, I mean, there are goal-seeking programs right now. I mean, your GPS is a goal-seeking program. It's a very crude goal-seeking program, but it's still out there, and it is, in a very crude fashion, it's self-modifying. So, what you're doing is you're taking that and creating variations on a theme, and it depends on how sophisticated those variations get.
Yeah. Well, and don't forget that computer that beat everybody at Jeopardy too.
Oh yeah. What was that one called?
Watson.
Oh, what was that called?
Watson.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And apparently, like Watson, they're still working on him. Like he's continuing to get more refined.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure they're applying Moore's law to him and getting him more compact and faster and more facile. And
the reason that they even brought him out was, what he's being used for right now is medical applications, making decisions as far as the same kind of decisions that doctors would make, backing up the doctor's ideas. And he's being rolled out for that right now. So that's going to be incredible.
That's interesting. I heard something on NPR a couple months ago where there's a movement to get people to something about starting a database of medical records that could be accessible for research purposes. Where like basically everybody would have their medical records in this database, and it would be anonymous. They wouldn't have anything necessarily attached to your name or your identity, but whatever was wrong with you or whatever you went to the doctor for or whatever you were treated with, like everything would be in the big pile of info that they could then analyze and subject to really stringent data research. And they think that this would shoot medical research ahead years and years and years if they could just run computer programs and analyze all this data at once. And really the only thing holding that back at this point is people who are uneasy about having their medical histories accessible. Yeah, exactly.
Well, you should be able to opt out of it, honestly. And
yeah, obviously.
Yeah. So they should just go and do it now.
I mean, I don't really care. if Big Brother ever actually came and took over, I would be the first one to fall because I just don't care about any of that stuff. They could come and pick me up without a problem.
Has anyone ever read a book that's called Steel Beach?
No.
It's about an artificial intelligence that takes over. Well, not takes over, but it is invented and it becomes the government. I don't remember who wrote it, but it's a really interesting exploration of that. And there's this guy that wants to commit suicide, but he can't because the computer won't let him. And that's the whole thing of the whole book. It's incredibly interesting.
Wow.
Shades of Colossus.
Yeah.
The Forbin Project. Anybody remember that one?
No, I don't think I've seen that.
Yeah, there was two computers. They're both defense computers. Colossus in the United States and Guardian in the Soviet Union, and they hooked up. And they decided between the two of them they're going to run the whole 9 yards, which was really charming. And finally, Colossus confronts its inventor, this guy by the name of Forbin, and says, "Eventually you will come to love me." And Forbin looks straight into the pickup and he says, "Never." And they break it right at that point.
Wow. Isn't that pretty much the plot of the next Avengers movie, too?
Age of Ultron? Oh,
Yeah.
I mean, except that's probably the invention of old Tony, and I wonder if Tony's sort of looking back and going, "Too smart for your own good, aren't you, bud?"
I do think if an evil computer ever takes over the world and tries to enslave and murder humanity, if it is at least appropriate that it has the voice of James Spader. That's how it should sound. Like I saw that the trailer just came out. Now I was watching that. And yeah, that's how that would sound. The evil computer.
Kill us all, but we have one request. Please take on the voice of James Spader.
Exactly. Exactly. Can't we fix up Stephen Hawking's voice box to sound like James Spader?
I am stunned that he hasn't improved on that, unless he figures he's become so associated with that, vote.
That's exactly why.
Yeah.
Yep, that's exactly why.
It's his trademark.
Yeah. I've heard him say that the only thing he doesn't like about it is that it makes him sound American.
He's a voter with a British accent.
Yeah, can't we fix him up with one that makes him sound British?
Well, Steve, I had a question for you. Actually, thinking of movies and movie villains. Well, two questions. First, in general, what did you think of the first new Star Trek movie with the new young cast from the original?
I really liked it.
My question is, I thought Nemo as a villain had a terribly weak backstory. His reason for being evil was really bad, and I was curious as to your thoughts on that.
Yeah, and not just his reason for being evil, but his reason for being that evil.
Yeah.
For like wanting to kill everybody. That's kind of a leap to go from a guy who's upset because his wife was killed to I'm gonna kill everybody.
Yeah, Spock, tries and fails to save them and can't, so he decides he's going to kill kill trillions of people because of that. Yeah,
it's because you're right. I mean, it's because Romulus was destroyed by a natural disaster. It
wasn't an attack or anything. It just happened.
Yeah, hey, wait a minute, we tried to help. I'm sorry it didn't work, but you don't have to kill us all.
Yeah, I love the movie. I thought it was fantastic. I thoroughly enjoyed it, but just that was the only thing that bothered me was just that reasoning.
Yeah, well, he pulled a Garth of Izar. Garth of Izar was healed by this race that gave him the ability to change his shape, and he in turn offered them the universe. They refused, and I condemned them to death. Boom. I literally just watched that a little while ago because of Star Trek Axanar, just to sort of see, where Garth of Izar, where he was supposedly X number of years ago versus where he wound up when Kirk ran onto him in that penal colony. And, it's interesting because there's even a somewhat of a facial resemblance between the guy who's playing him in the prequel versus the guy who plays him, in the TOS episode.
Speaking of like the the plot conveniences in that Star Trek movie. The thing that always made me laugh, and I love the movie, but I mean, the they just so happen to throw Captain Kirk onto an icy planet where not only is old Spock hanging out, but Scotty's there too.
Yeah.
It's really a
Never
small
mind the
universe.
fact that it is so close to Vulcan that you can actually see the implosion of the planet.
Yeah.
I mean, you would have to be closer than we are to the moon to see that.
It's in the sky during daylight. Yeah.
There's an issue of scale there, I think.
Yeah. Well,
Literally small universe.
There was I forget. I think it's X Astris, the Star Trek site. The guy who runs that did this really careful size analysis of the ship, the Enterprise in the new Star Trek, and he figured out by scaling it just right that the ship in the new movies is actually something like 3 or 4 times as big as it's supposed to be. Like the ship in the original series, the William Shatner ship is like this big, and then the Chris Pine version is like that big. And I mean, I'm pretty sure as the audience we're not supposed to notice that, but he like carefully examined it, and he was like, it's way too big. So I can only imagine his head probably exploded when when Kirk crashed on a planet. Oh, hey, it's old Spock. What a coincidence!
I would also be interested to know in the second movie the physics of raising up the Enterprise from being underwater.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
How big was that thing, and how much pressure was the hull at? I mean, the hull was designed for having vacuum around it, not having 4 or 5 atmospheres worth of water pressure.
Well, and people complained about that too in the first one when you saw the ship being built on Earth, and people were like, since when do they build starships down on the planet in the atmosphere?
There were actually a couple of Star Trek novels that proposed that the Enterprise was built in sections on Earth and then ported up to the to the shipyard in orbit. And I mean, I can see that to a point because there are some advantages to being able to assemble stuff in a gravitational field, whereas out of a gravitational field you're completely at the mercy of Newton's third law. And but the thing is, again, moving that much mass, it's going to take some it's going to take some serious thrusters. It's going to.
Yeah. I kind of liked it because of the visual. I thought that that scene in that Star Trek movie where Kirk, rides up on his motorcycle and sees the Enterprise being assembled off there in the distance. The one that everybody was like, oh, no, they wouldn't do it that way. I thought that was nice because, and it reminded me of those photographs of in English shipbuilding towns. Where there would be a street, and at the end of the street is the dock, and there's this humongous boat, and it reminded me of that sort of thing, Then when the boat's finished, they launch it and it goes out to sea and it's just gone, It reminded me of something I think maybe that's kind of the visual they were going for, like the space version of that, of like a shipbuilding town.
It was a good way to get an idea of scale, that's for sure.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Thinking of physics and movies, I just put a link in the group chat. But I read an interesting article and watched a video the other day on the new Interstellar movie that's coming out in November, which I'm super excited about.
Yes.
One of the interesting things is they actually went and talked with a real physicist and specialist in black hole physics to figure out what would it really look like to be that close to a black hole, what's actually going on. And so they put a lot of effort into developing the physics of the black hole and how the light behaves around it. And there was a really interesting video on how they did that, and they actually learned some interesting new things about how they they published some papers on what they found about how they expect things to behave and how they expect the light to behave around it. It's very interesting.
Wow. Yeah, I'm checking it out now. It looks really cool. Yeah, that does look like a really cool movie.
Yeah, when I saw the first trailer for that, I got so excited.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
we hope that Matthew McConaughey doesn't thank God at the end of it, though.
What movie are we talking about?
Interstellar.
Interstellar.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Matthew McConaughey. I think one of his lines is, I was flying into black holes before people were paying me to."
Him and his. My papa said, "Son, you're going to drive me to drink it if you don't stop dragging that hot rod Lincoln."
Yeah, I mean, it's I'm a sucker for like serious sci-fi movies. Like 2001: A Space Odyssey is one of my favorite movies ever, and I like Christopher Nolan in general. I'm a fan of him a lot, so I'm really looking forward to that. And Matthew McConaughey, man, Matthew McConaughey has totally turned it around the last couple of years. He used to be the guy who was like just jerking off and doing romantic comedies, and now, I mean, he's really.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. He's done some really good roles recently.
Yeah, he's pulled a Clooney.
Yeah, Steve, I have to ask you. I mean, Dallas Buyers Club's been showing up on HBO lately. Do you think it's worth the time spent?
I actually haven't had a chance to watch it yet.
Huh.
I don't know. I hear it's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear it's good too.
What show?
Dallas Buyers Club, the film that McConaughey won Best Actor for this year.
Okay.
Yeah, I hear it's good. I haven't had a chance to watch it. But yeah, I think Jared Leto won Best Supporting Actor for that too. They picked up a couple Oscars this year. And he mentioned his terrible band in his acceptance speech. I remember that.
So I'd like to review. We have covered now AI and Star Trek.
Yes.
Matthew McConaughey.
So
So what's next?
let's see. AI, Star Trek, Matthew McConaughey.
I actually just have a general interest. Just everybody just has a general location. Where are you guys from? We know where Steve's from.
Yeah.
I'm from Springfield, Illinois, and I was just wondering where's everybody coming from? I know we got some people around the globe here. I'm just kind of interested in where you guys at.
Yeah, where's everybody from?
I'm from Memphis, Tennessee. I'm currently attending university in Daytona Beach, Florida.
Home is Cleveland, Ohio for me, or actually a suburb of Cleveland, but Cleveland is home, yeah.
I'm from.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm from Mountain Home, Idaho, which is southern Idaho, but I'm currently living in Bellingham, Washington.
Yeah, and I'm a Swede, but I'm living currently in Ireland.
Ireland. Have a Guinness for me.
Oh, yeah, I will.
And in the chat, Jay says he's from Prairie du Sac, Wisconsin. So there we go. And Harry?
Perth, Western Australia.
Yes. Where it is a school night, I remind everybody.
Like the most isolated city in the world, pretty much.
Hey, at least you got internet. That's all you need.
That's all any of us need.
Yeah, although
That's what I did.
I'm old enough that I remember when they laid the first undersea cable and it got hit and we lost internet.
Oh no. Yeah, I remember I did an internship with Pratt & Whitney in East Hartford, Connecticut, and it was basically, it was a spring, and like I was the only intern there in my group, and so I basically was just kind of like by myself for 6 months, and I just spent all of my time on YouTube.
And in the chat, Paul says he is in Bishop Stortford, UK. So I think that's everybody.
Cool.
We're from all over the globe.
Yeah. Though we've got a lot of the Midwest United States covered.
Yeah. Yeah. If there's a natural disaster somewhere on the planet, unless it's somewhere in Asia, I think one of us will know about it pretty quick.
Yeah.
Come to think of it, Steve, do you have any subscribers in the Pacific Basin? Japan, China, something like that?
I know I have a few subscribers. I think they're all American expatriates, but I know I have people who live in Japan or in South Korea who watch me.
Terrific.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
That's been interesting for me. I attend a private university. I go to a school called Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. But it has a very large international student population. The main thing people come here for is flight training. They train more people for airline pilots than pretty much anywhere else in the country. But it's mainly for training pilots and for aerospace engineering, which is what I study. But there's, especially in the graduate program, there's a huge percentage of Asian students and a lot of European students, and in the undergraduate too. I'd say probably as much of a third of the total school is international students. So that's been very interesting culturally, because I've met people from all over the world and worked with people from all over the world.
Wow. Yeah, I grew up in a town where there were like 400 people, and when we got an exchange student like from Britain, it was as if they were from Mars. I mean, we was like, oh, we have a new student, and he's from England. It was, yeah, I mean, no language barrier, not a huge cultural barrier, but it was just like, wow.
Yeah,
you know, go ahead.
I was watching Patton the other day, and there's that portion of his speech where he quotes. God, I'm trying to remember who he quoted, saying that the English and the Americans are two people separated by a common language.
Yeah.
And I'm also instantly reminded of those places. You know, we all know that they exist. And as an atheist, you know about this, Steve, very well. That people literally are so isolated because they're all, you know, of one belief system or whatever have you, and they think that's the world.
Oh yeah.
And the second something invades from outside, whoa, you know, future shock.
Oh, absolutely. And Paul in the chat asked if I can remember where he was from in Britain. I cannot, unfortunately. The only thing I remember about him, he wasn't with us the whole school year. I'm not sure if his parents were just here for part of the year and then they left or what, but he was with us when I was in 6th grade, and the only thing I remember about the British kid was he got in a fight with someone in gym class, and he called him a bitch. And we all thought that was so cool.
When I was
like,
in,
I'll fight you right here, you bitch! And I was like, ooh. Fight!
When I was in high school, we had and this was many, many moons ago, we had an exchange student from West Germany. And I was actually in history class. We were watching the Berlin Wall come down. And he was in that history class with me, watching it live on TV, and it was an incredibly emotional moment for him. And he cried. It was a pretty interesting experience. His name was Lars.
Wow.
Wow. I actually had a similar experience on the other side. I went to Germany, and I was an exchange student there in 2001. I had only been there for about a month on September 11th. And I saw that entire event from an entirely different side of the ocean. And there was definitely, in Germany, there was definitely a lot of sympathy and empathy for it. Certainly, we know what this feels like. We know how that can happen. But I missed out on a lot of the, as it was related to me secondhand after the fact, hysteria. In some places, especially in small town Illinois, which is where all my family lives, is in very small towns, where some of this ridiculous, there's price gouging on gas. Casey gas stations were jumping at over $5 a gallon and things like that. And it was really kind of interesting to see. I watched it live on CNN, which is crazy that you could see that, but I kind of wondered, for especially for those who aren't in the United States, what was it like from perspectives in other parts of the world, or even if you're from the United States. That's one thing that I'm always interested in, is kind of getting a bigger picture.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was teaching a maintenance training class that entire week, and one of the things that I was concerned about was, I mean, I had two students. I had one from Taiwan and one from the People's Republic of China, and I mean, we typically went out for lunch every day, and my biggest concern was just, you know, making sure that the whole, what's the word I'm looking for, the just overreaction didn't splash on my students, because I mean they were my responsibility.
Right.
I was working at a flower shop in Mountain Home, Idaho. At the time, I was a bookkeeper and the clerk at a flower shop, and there was something we all wanted to do something, and I think that was part of. I wound up making a sign outside that said, "Remember, blah blah blah, whatever," and I actually lost my job because of September 11th because people stopped buying flowers. They just didn't seem important anymore.
Wow.
Wow.
That's
So they
not
had
an
to lay me off.
association I would make. I mean, just quit buying flowers because we were attacked.
Yeah, I mean, I think that people just emotionally, because our sales went down like crazy. Nobody came in at all. Funerals, that was it.
Wow. You know, that was something, looking back on it now, I mean, at the time, and I'm kind of conflicted about it when I think about 9/11 all these years later, because at the time it seemed like the worst thing that ever happened. You know, because now I look at it as it's sort of emblematic of how lucky we are in the United States, because we don't really have a history of that sort of thing happening. Countries in Europe, countries in Asia have to endure these sorts of events a lot more often, and have a much richer cultural memory of, you know, I mean, think about Germany in World War II. Just utter devastation. You know, think about Britain in World War II.
Exactly.
You know, I mean, London being bombed to smithereens, and we don't really have anything like that in the United States. So when 9/11 happened, it was like, oh my God, this is, you know, how could this happen here?
You only have one single war that's been on American soil, don't you? And that's the Civil War.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Before 9/11, the most recent war fought on American soil was the Civil War. And
Well, wasn't it Hawaii in
Well, yeah.
Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But it was mostly American possessions that were attacked in the Pacific Theater during World War II. Hawaii wasn't even a state back then.
That's
it was
right,
a
yeah.
territory.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't added as a state until 1960. So, I mean, that was the first mainland attack on the United States since, you know, I mean, you could argue from exterior since the War of 1812.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, in the chat, Jay said we got a very small taste of what Japan felt in World War II. Yeah, exactly. And and you know, it. So, and I remember at the time I felt the same way. I felt deeply sad, and I still feel when I think about it. Like, it never really made me angry. A lot of Americans got angry about 9/11, and I never really felt angry about it. I never really felt like I needed to get revenge against somebody. I just felt like just deeply sad about the whole thing, and that's still the only real emotion that I feel about it. And when I look at what it has done, and you know, the ripples of it in our society since then, it makes me even sadder. You know, I feel like we sort of we overreacted, and we overreacted in the wrong direction. You know, I don't know.
Well, look who was in the driver's seat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually,
the best thing we can do for the entire country is everybody needs to go shopping.
Yeah.
Exactly. The best advice ever. Thanks.
I did discover one thing, though, because during the 9/11 period, the few months afterwards, I listened probably and watched more George W. Bush speeches than I ever had before or ever would again.
Oh,
and,
you poor soul.
Yeah, I know, right? And I discovered that if you listen to him without watching him, like if you just hear him on the radio, he sounds almost acceptable. There's something about like watching the dude on TV and seeing the expression on his face, like the deer in headlights. It makes the whole, you're like, oh God, this guy's the president of the United States. But if you just hear him on the radio, it's not quite as bad, unless he makes some sort of a verbal flub, and then it ruins the illusion. But
Well, maybe he should have lived in the era of FDR.
Yeah.
Oh God, can you imagine? I just watched. They just had the Ken Burns documentary about the Roosevelts on PBS like last month, and it was. I mean, it was excellent. It was so good and so interesting, and you just watch that and you think, where are these people today? You know, like here are these people like Teddy Roosevelt, Eleanor Roosevelt, Franklin Roosevelt. These were incredibly rich, affluent.
They're all dead, Steve.
Powerful people. And yeah, but like, what happened to the rich Americans who had civic responsibility, who thought,
Well,
let's do what we
Bill
can
Gates.
to try and.
What
That's
happened
true,
to
Bill
the
Gates.
Everett Dirksons and the Paul Simons and the guys who back in the 60s could actually reach across the aisle and do something meaningful and not feel like, oh, they're Democrats, I can't work with, oh, they're Republicans, I
Yeah,
can't,
true.
all of that crap. And that's,
Yeah.
I
The
don't know
contract
how-
with America is what happened in the 80s. Or the,
Well,
that
that was the 90s.
the
I
90s,
think.
I mean,
yeah.
sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it was a contract on Democrats.
Exactly.
I mean, hello, let's be real.
Let's be unreasonable and be completely unreasonable without any.
Yeah, and I'll
Yeah.
tell you what, that speech that the character Will McAvoy gave in that one episode of The Newsroom says it all. I mean, he spells it out chapter and verse. You can find it on YouTube. It is, in my humble opinion, in 6 minutes, it sums up the Tea Party and what he refers to as the American Taliban.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, it did kind of ring. It did ring pretty true when I heard it, and it's a shame because what the real tragedy is that people see ideologically opposed people as enemies instead of as people to try and work with and reach a compromise with, and that's
Yeah.
and so nothing ever gets done, and it's like
And people have grown up with that idea.
yeah, exactly. I have. I mean,
Mhm.
it really the culture really changed. The political culture really changed and took a hard turn in that direction
Mm-hmm.
with the ascendance of Reagan. And Reagan is the first president I remember. I mean, I was born in 1980, so I was, Reagan's the first president I remember. So I was raised in that. And the idea that, it's better if you can't have 100% of what you want, then it's better to keep the other guy from getting 1% of what he wants.
Yeah, it's interesting because I was born in 1950. I mean, but even growing up, I wasn't really conscious of Eisenhower. I mean, the first president I was really conscious of was Kennedy, and especially considering the Bay of Pigs and the missiles of October. That whole business, and then of course a year later he was assassinated. So I mean but Eisenhower was, I mean, he was there, but he wasn't out there. I mean, certainly not in the same way that people are now, and I think in a large portion because the media wasn't as over-dominating then as it is now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, there was media that had some kind of control to it. I mean, there was the Murrows of the media were dead by now. I mean, and you just don't see it anymore. Now it's all Fox News and CNN, and there's just an opinion behind everything, and there really never should be.
By the way, Captain Loose Cannon joined us a few minutes ago. We've been talking.
Yo, Cap.
Hi, Captain.
Hello.
Nice hat.
Like that.
I have several hats, but I can't find some of them. I'm at my parents' house right now. I'm on a little bit of leave from university. And they've been using my room for storage, and my sister's clothes is everywhere.
So is that your sister's Mickey Mouse cap, or is that yours?
That's mine, actually.
Okay.
When I was very young. Still fits.
A man should wear his own Mickey Mouse cap, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We were talking a minute ago about the 9/11 and America's actions after that. Thinking of current conflicts and ISIS, I forget what I was listening to this morning that made me think of it, but I was thinking this morning that ISIS today seems to be behaving almost exactly as the same way Israel is depicted as having taken over the lands in the Old Testament and in the biblical text. And I was trying to think of ways in which they're similar and dissimilar, and I couldn't really think of that many ways in which they were dissimilar.
That would not be a popular sentiment.
It would not. I have not expressed that sentiment publicly.
It's interesting though. I think if that is like if you could get your face on television and say that, That would be like
No,
the
of
most
course not.
provocative thing you could possibly say.
I don't think they really
Immediately
compare
hire
to modern
yourself
day
some very
Israel.
good personal guards.
Yeah.
Need them.
That's like
Yes,
anyone
no,
who said after 9/11, anyone who said, well, maybe they had a reason to do it.
Right.
Why do you hate America?
You know, I would not go
Yeah,
on the
that's the only
Iraqi
reason.
factor to express those sentiments.
Yeah, that's true. There are certain opinions that if you even hint, it's like the political equivalent of like expressing sympathy for a child molester almost.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, don't say that. Like, well, I just think maybe Israel maybe contributes a little bit to the. No.
No.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and that's a problem too because Israel has pulled some boners and they need to be called on it. But the question is, who bells the cat?
Yeah, and it's that most of the at least conservative and most of the American population in general, that those stories are looked to for inspiration. But if those stories were set in a modern day context, then people would find it abhorrent. But because of the way we're told to look at the Bible and the way that people are told to interpret things, and put on your Bible glasses when you read things, we don't take the same critical look at those stories as we do modern stories.
Yeah, well, and I mean that the religious element of it just complicates everything so much. My preferred solution to the Mideast crisis, and I've said this before, and I'm 95% joking, but part of me is serious, is we just take Israel and we take all the people in Israel and we remove them from that area and we just give them Texas. We say it's the same climate, it's the same sort of place. You can just have it. It's so much bigger. You'll have so much more room. It's yours. Right?
Well, a lot of Christians do consider Texas the Holy Land of America.
Exactly.
Yeah,
They'll get along
ask
fine.
Rick Perry.
Yeah. John Hagee's church is there. He loves Israel. They'll get along.
John Hagee.
500 million churches are there.
I mean, but the only reason why that wouldn't work, other than anti-Semitism in this country and people saying, we don't want them here, is that no, Israel is their land. That's the promised land. That's the land that they were supposed to have that God gave to them.
Yeah, except there's no architecture or archaeological evidence to support any of that.
Yeah.
And that whole business, the pins are just getting knocked out from under it.
Yeah. It's just, I don't know. It's a problem that I am very happy that it is not my responsibility to solve.
Yeah, I always get a little disheartened watching Aron Ra's videos about the Texas educational system.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but he is so stone on the nose. It is such a pleasure listening
he's
to
great.
him.
He's great, but he's cut out quite a bit of work for himself.
Yeah, he has. With his new video series and all the stuff he's been doing, I'm glad to see him though. Get the support that he has and be able to get access to some more resources and make some of his content more public.
Absolutely, yeah. He is a great example of someone taking who's come into sort of a Patreon windfall and is using it for an incredibly positive purpose.
Because it's hard to find someone who, like him, is enough of an expert about what he's talking about to be able to have real, meaningful discussions with people. It's for some of us, when we're trying to defend a point about evolution or something, we got to go look things up, and we don't necessarily have access to the immediate knowledge. But he's got that great background knowledge, and he knows how to get his points across well and talk about the actual facts of evolution.
And what kills me about him is he's largely, as I understand it, self-taught. That is admirable as hell.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, he is mostly self-taught, and you can tell. I've had a chance to speak to him a couple of times, just in Hangouts and stuff like this, and so sharp, just right on the money every time. Just a really almost intimidatingly informed, smart guy. Paul in the chat asked a question. He said, "Why is my Patreon pick? What is my Patreon pick? Is it of me at the dentist?" I think it's the Patreon pick is the same as my user pick when I turn off my camera here. It's my throwing my head back. That's just it's just a screen grab of me. It's a screen grab of me laughing. A friend of mine, Jason Bredet, he made a country album, and he asked me to record myself doing an evil laugh so he could use it on one of the tracks. And so I recorded myself doing an evil laugh, and I took pictures of it as I did it and sent it to him. So that's where the picture comes from.
Yeah, here I thought you would, somebody had said something that really nailed you, and you just sort of lost it for a moment there.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, the last time I had a laugh like that, I was working another board somewhere, and somebody put up a question on the board: is it, if we are all parts of the body of Christ, what part are you? This guy answered, "I am the great Cornholio." Lost it. 30 seconds. I was a gone goose.
That's funny.
Yes. I literally lost control of breathing, voluntary response, the whole night. It was just hit me where I lived.
That's funny. Hi, Christy. I couldn't hear you. What?
Oh, okay. So I want to check my sound.
Oh, there you go.
1 second. Yeah.
You're just a little low.
Okay, so that should be better now.
Much better.
Yes.
Hello, everyone.
You made it.
I did, and on time. So all good.
Actually, no. We're almost done.
You guys had the time change. I checked. Yes.
But you made it for the last couple of minutes at least.
Are you serious?
Yeah. No. Yeah. We started an hour ago.
Oh my gosh. See, this is the bummer because I'm in Europe. We haven't had our time change.
Yeah, I know. Why can't we all just be on the same time?
Well, hey, do you want me to?
It would require international cooperation. We're not up.
Yeah, you're right. Forget that.
We
Did
can't
you
do the
want me
metric
to
system.
Steve, did you want me to do my pitch?
Yes, Christy has been kind enough to prepare a Patreon pitch.
Yes.
Yes, please. I will. You have the floor, Christy. Go for it.
Okay. So just really quickly, the reason I wanted to do this was that Steve is asking us to be his supporters and his patrons, but unless you have, you are a patron, you don't kind of know what you're getting involved with and getting into. And it's been a really positive experience. And so to share a little bit about why I support Steve, I have 5 reasons, but I'm just going to go over one of them this time. And that is that I really appreciate all his content. And one of the reasons I decided to make a monthly contribution is because he puts out so much content, and it's so great, and I realized that I was looking forward to it. And it's not only his current content and his future content that I feel like I'm supporting, but also his body of work, because I still dip into his series and his old episodes. When it's a Tuesday night and there's nothing else to do on Google, I can always go to Steve as a backup and find some entertainment. And that to me is so valuable that we've discussed this, Steve and I give $5 a month, because when I figure the time that I'm spending watching his content for $5, I couldn't watch a movie for that much a month. So yeah, that was one of the first 5 reasons why I support Steve on Patreon, or as I'm a Patreon patron, whatever. And I just wanted to share that for everybody else who was watching. So.
Well, thank you. That really means a lot to me, Christy.
Oh, well, I got 4 more to go.
Yeah, and that was her idea, by the way. I didn't put her up to that.
No, that's true. I volunteered because I used to do fundraising for Democratic candidates, and I would do it because I supported their their ideas, but I always felt kind of slimy. But with Steve, I get to give money and feel good about myself, and I wanted to share that because it is a reason to become part of this project, this community of patrons.
That's really great. That really makes me feel good to hear you say that. And Jay says in the chat, I just want to see Steve well fed. Well, thank you, Jay.
I just can't wait till the next Atheist Reads book.
Yeah, and that's
I cannot wait for that. Honestly, I think it's clearly obvious you worked the hardest on that. Or I would think very close to it because all the research and everything else that you do. But I'll tell you, that's what introduced me to you in the first place, Steve. And then I got the Stephen Stuffy stuff and the 5 Stupid Things and all the other stuff. And I mean, the work that you put into it is very clear, and it's, I don't know, I just really appreciate what you do with that.
Well, thank you.
I think we should petition the Union Mail. I think that's the name of that newspaper that you used to read from.
Oh, the Herald Mail.
The Herald Mail.
Herald Mail. We should all petition them to restart their mail column again. I loved that.
Hey, there's this guy on YouTube who used to make fun of it, and we really like that. Could you maybe do that again?
Yeah, we don't care about the actual opinions. We just want to hear them made fun of.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, I mean, Mail Call was like one of my favorite shows to do, and but at the same time, I'm glad that it's not there anymore because I mean, as a resident of this community, I mean, it was so embarrassing. It was so mortifying.
So what you got to do is you got to find somebody else, like somebody in Virginia or West Virginia or Pennsylvania, get their newspaper and then make fun of them.
Exactly. But you know what's funny is they replaced that feature in the paper with because the thing about Mail Call was that it was anonymous, and they have a new feature in the paper that replaced it called Feedback that's not anonymous, where you have to give your name, and the comments are so much less crazy now. It's almost as if when people have their identity attached to it, they're not willing to say incredibly insane, horrible things.
Consequences? Oh no, I'm out.
Yeah.
Steve, I have a quick question for your sound. I noticed you're not wearing headphones, so I'm curious as like what you're doing to as far as like getting sound without getting like speakers feed everything.
I have earbuds.
Oh, okay. I couldn't see that.
So I am wearing headphones. They're just they're very slim. I have the wire going behind my back, so you can't.
And slimming.
Yes, thank you.
Slimming.
Well, the webcam adds 10 pounds, so I don't want to look that well fed. Appearances, like a pro, exactly. Well, look, it has been an hour. And I would love to do this all afternoon, but I'm going to have to call an end to this little party line here. I want to thank all you guys for joining me this time. This was last time it was just me and Christy and Henrik, and we had a great time. And now it's all of us. We had an even better time.
Is there a limit?
Is there what?
Is there a limit supported by Google Hangout?
I think it's 10. Is that how many we have? 2, 4.
Yeah, we have 10.
Yeah, I think we're at the limit. Yeah, I think we've filled up the room. How about that?
We need a bigger stadium.
We need to move from right now we're kind of just playing in small clubs. We need to move up and start playing like in minor league ballparks.
Hey, speaking of that, Steve, when the Suns move out, have anybody made any plans of what they're going to do with the stadium?
Oh God. I have not heard any official plans. I think what's probably going to happen is we're going to have an empty stadium.
Oh, bloody hell.
For the rest of, Well, here's the thing. In Hagerstown, right across the road from where the ballpark is now, there is a crumbling old electrical plant that has been there abandoned for 40 years.
You did a video there, didn't you?
I might have. I think I mentioned it. I showed it in a video. It's been there for 40 years. It's never been torn down. It's just there crumbling. About 2 years ago, they finally decided to put a fence up around it to keep homeless people or from congregating in it. So that's Hagerstown. So if they don't get a tenant for the ballpark pretty soon, it's just I'm sure the same thing is going to happen there. It's we're going to have an empty ballpark. It's too bad because they just renovated it a couple years ago. It's not. I mean, it's old, but it's not a terrible ballpark. But I mean, what sports franchise would want to play in Hagerstown? Paul says, "Am I going to get a new hat?" Probably not. I don't know. When this one wears out, I'll probably get like an Orioles hat or something. But I mean, I'm not going to get one like as soon as the team leaves. I'm too lazy to do that. But anyway, I'm going to sign off here. Thanks, everybody who is in the chat with me is a Patreon patron of mine. I thank all of them for their contributions. It is appreciated more than I can possibly say. All you guys who are watching, who are Patreon patrons of mine, likewise, I thank you so much. You make my life so much better and so much easier. And I'm going to do this again next month. This is going to be a regular monthly thing. So if you guys who are patrons and didn't get a chance to join in this time want to join me, I would love to have some of you join me when we do this again next month. And those of you who are watching who would like to join me for this and have a little bit of this fun for yourself, you can join in by becoming a Patreon patron of mine. Just go to my Patreon page. It's patreon.com/Steve Shives, my name, all one word, and consider making a regular contribution to support this channel. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you for having us, Steve. It's been great.
Yes,
Bye, Steve. It's been wonderful.